Some people are the main characters, my sister once said. Others are just extras. I didn't know she meant my son. The night started perfectly. Or at least, that's how it looked from the outside. The reservation at the Meridian House was for 7 prime dining hour. The restaurant was alive with soft jazz and the shimmer of glass against candlelight. Every table was full. Every plate that passed by smelled like something only the rich should eat. My sister Caroline had chosen the place. Best seafood in the city, she'd texted. Perfect for a family dinner. You'll love it. I didn't reply. I just confirmed we'd be there. My son Eli, 14 and awkwardly tall, sat beside me, glancing between the silverware and the menu like he was afraid to touch anything. Across from us sat Caroline's twin daughters, Sophie and Emily, both 16, both flawless, scrolling through the menu as if they'd done this their whole lives. At the head of the table was my mother, Patricia, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she examined the wine list with the precision of a queen deciding who to invite into her court. The Maine lobster here is supposed to be incredible, Caroline said, still studying her menu. Flown in fresh every morning. Girls, you should get the lobster platter. It comes with drawn butter and garlic potatoes. Can I get that too? Eli asked. His voice was careful, hopeful. Caroline's eyes flicked to him, then to me, then back to the menu. That's a little expensive for, well, you know. For what? I asked evenly. For everyone, she said quickly. We're celebrating Sophie and Emily getting into their top colleges. This dinner's really for them. Everyone else should probably order, modestly. Eli's smile faltered. But you just told them. They're the guests of honor, sweetie. Different situation. The server appeared, a young woman named Alyssa. I recognized her instantly. I'd hired her myself 3 months earlier. She didn't show it, but I could tell she knew who I was. Good evening, everyone, she said warmly. Can I start you with drinks? Caroline ordered a bottle of Chardonnay. My mother ordered a martini. The twins, sparkling water with lemon. When Alyssa turned to Eli, Caroline cut in before he could speak. Just tap water for him. Regular glass. Nothing fancy. Eli looked down. The sound of her pen scratching the notepad was louder than it should have been. Caroline, I said quietly once Alyssa left, that was rude. What? I'm just keeping costs reasonable. You know how expensive this place is. You just ordered a $75 bottle of wine. Look, Anna, she said, her tone soft but sharp. Not everyone needs the full treatment. Some people are just extras. Extras? You know, in movies. Some are the stars, some are supporting cast, and some are just background. They're there, but not really part of the story. My mother didn't even look up from her menu. Caroline's right. Eli should understand this dinner is about the girls. Not everyone gets to be the center of attention. My throat tightened. Eli just stared at the empty plate in front of him, pretending to read the embossed logo on the napkin. When Alyssa returned with the drinks, she placed each glass carefully, the Chardonnay, the martini, the sparkling water. Then she slid, not set, a plain water glass toward my son. The kind we used for staff meals. It scraped softly across the linen, stopping just short of his hand. Eli lifted it without a word. Are we ready to order? Alyssa asked gently. Caroline jumped in before anyone else. The girls will have the lobster platters. I'll take the sea base. Mother? The scallops, Patricia said. Alyssa turned to me. And for you? The lobster platter, I said. Excellent choice. And for the young man? He's fine with the water, Caroline said. We're not ordering for him. Alyssa froze, her pen hovering midair. I'm sorry, nothing at all? We don't feed extras, Caroline said lightly, like she was discussing the weather. He can eat at home later. Alyssa's eyes flicked to mine. She knew. She knew this was wrong. But she was professional enough to wait for my cue. I smiled. Noted. Caroline frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said softly, that I heard you. Eli didn't say a word. He just stared into his water glass, the candlelight reflecting against his lashes. Across the table, his cousins avoided his eyes. The appetizers came oysters for the table. Caroline hadn't asked if anyone wanted them. Eli watched as everyone else ate, The girls making delighted noises, my mother complimenting the freshness. I didn't touch mine. You're not eating, my mother said. I'm not hungry. Suit yourself. The conversation flowed around us like warm water, laughter, college plans, future dorms, East Coast campuses. Eli was invisible. But not for long. Because across the dining room, I saw Chef Marcus step out from the kitchen, doing his usual walkthrough of tables. Checking. Observing. Making sure everything met his standards. And as he began heading our way, something inside me shifted, a slow, steady burn climbing up my spine. I stood. Chef Marcus, I called out, my voice carrying just enough to make nearby tables pause. Would you join us for a moment? He looked surprised, but came over with a polite smile. Of course, Miss Hart. Is everything all right? Perfect, I said. I just wanted to introduce you to my family. This is my sister Caroline, I said to the chef, my smile steady. My mother Patricia. My nieces Sophie and Emily. And this, I placed a hand gently on Eli's shoulder. This is my son. A pleasure, Chef Marcus said politely, glancing around the table. He could feel the tension too. You could have sliced it with one of his knives. Marcus has been our head chef here at the Meridian House for almost 2 years, I continued. He's the reason people call this the best seafood in the city. He nodded modestly. We do our best. And you've done beautifully, I said. It's not easy running a place like this. But then again, it helps when you have the right support. I paused, letting the words sink in as my gaze returned to Caroline. Actually, I said, maybe I should clarify something for everyone. The table fell quiet. Even my mother stopped swirling her martini. I don't just support the Meridian House, I said. I own it. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Caroline's fork froze halfway to her mouth. You what? She whispered. I own this restaurant, I repeated calmly. The building, the business, everything. When you made the reservation, Caroline, you made it at my establishment. My mother blinked at me, her face pale. Anna, is that true? Completely. I bought it 18 months ago. I also own 2 other places downtown, the Harbor Loft and Lucent. Alyssa, who had been hovering nearby, stopped in her tracks. I gestured toward her. Alyssa, would you mind confirming that for my family? She hesitated, then straightened her shoulders. Yes, of course. Miss Hart is the owner of the Meridian House and the other restaurants she mentioned. She's our boss. Thank you, I said softly. Caroline's lips parted, but no words came out. Her face had turned an alarming shade of pink. So, I continued, when you said earlier, what was it again? Oh yes. We don't feed extras. Caroline's eyes darted between me, Eli, and the chef. You were telling my employee not to serve my son. In my own restaurant. I didn't know, she stammered. Anna, No, I cut her off, my voice low but sharp. You didn't know. Because you never asked. You assumed. My mother finally found her voice. Anna, there's no need to make a scene. Actually, there is, I said. Because you backed her up. You told your grandson he should know his place. You called him background at a table he was invited to. The air felt thick, pressing in around us. Sophie and Emily looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. I turned to Marcus. Chef, my son would like to order now. Eli, what do you want? He looked up at me, his eyes glossy but steady. The lobster platter, he said quietly. Good choice. I smiled at Marcus. Make it special. Add the truffle mac and cheese and the grilled asparagus. And bring the chocolate lava cake for dessert. Also, surprise him with one of your off-menu dishes. Something he'll never forget. Marcus's eyes softened. I have just the thing, he said. I'll take care of it personally. As he disappeared back into the kitchen, silence blanketed the table. People at nearby tables were whispering. Caroline's hand trembled as she set down her glass. Anna, please, she said finally. This is humiliating. Interesting, I said, leaning back. You feel humiliated now. How do you think Eli felt when you called him an extra and gave him a glass of tap water? I apologized, she said weakly. After finding out I own the restaurant, I shot back. Would you have apologized if I didn't? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. My mother cleared her throat. We should discuss this privately. No, Mom, I said. We're doing this here. Because you both need to hear it. I looked at Caroline. For 6 years, I worked to build this business. Started with a food truck, worked 90-hour weeks, burned through savings, slept in the van some nights. I bought my first restaurant 3 years ago. And not once, did either of you ask how I was doing. You just assumed I was failing. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. You never told us. Because you never asked. The words came out louder than I intended. Heads turned. Eli reached under the table and squeezed my hand, grounding me. You were too busy teaching your daughters that some people matter more than others. That kindness is optional when you have money. That people like me, like my son, are just background noise. Alyssa returned then, holding a silver tray. On it was a beautifully plated meal. Smaller lobster tail, truffle mac and cheese, glistening asparagus, and a miniature Wagyu slider that wasn't on the menu. Eli's eyes widened. This looks amazing, he whispered. Enjoy it, I told him. Then I looked back at my sister. The bill for tonight will be interesting, I said quietly. You've run up about $400 so far. That bottle of wine alone was $75. Anna, I thought. You assumed I'd pay? Caroline nodded, her face blotchy. You assumed I'd foot the bill for the dinner where my own son wasn't allowed to eat. Please, I didn't mean. Alyssa, I said, standing, please bring the check for this table. And prepare a private table for 2 in the back room. Caroline's chair screeched as she stood. You can't just leave us with a $400 bill. Watch me, I said. You wanted to celebrate your daughters. You made it clear who mattered and who didn't. Now you can pay for your own celebration. Her voice cracked. I don't have that kind of money right now. Then maybe, I said, you should have thought twice before treating a child like he didn't deserve to eat. I placed my napkin on the table, lifted Eli's plate, and turned toward the back room. The restaurant was silent except for the soft clink of dishes and the faint hum of jazz. As I walked away, I could feel every pair of eyes following us, some shocked, some admiring, some whispering behind half-raised hands. Eli stayed close beside me, clutching his plate of lobster like a badge of honor. Mom, he murmured, are we in trouble? No, sweetheart, I said. We're just done being extras. The private dining room was quiet, almost too quiet. Soft candlelight flickered across the white tablecloth, throwing small shadows against the walls. After everything that had just happened out there, the silence felt heavy, like the pause between lightning and thunder. Eli sat across from me, his plate still steaming. He kept glancing toward the closed door, where muffled voices echoed faintly from the main room. Mom, he said after a moment, are they mad at us? I smiled faintly. Probably. Did we do something wrong? That question hit me right in the chest. I took a slow breath. No, baby. We didn't do anything wrong. We just reminded them that we don't have to sit quietly when people try to make us small. He poked at the lobster with his fork. Grandma looked really mad. Yeah, I said softly. She doesn't like being wrong. But sometimes people get angry because they're embarrassed. He nodded slowly, like he was filing it away. For a few minutes, we just sat there. He ate quietly, and I watched him, his small, careful hands, the way his brow furrowed as he concentrated on cutting the asparagus just right. Something inside me ached. All those years of working late, of missing birthdays, of trying to build something he could be proud of, and still, I'd let my own family make him feel like he didn't belong. You know, I said after a while, when I started my first restaurant, I used to sleep in my van some nights. It was freezing in the winter. I'd park behind grocery stores just to use their outlets to charge my phone. His eyes widened. You really did that? Yeah. I wanted to build something real. Something that couldn't be taken away. Why? He asked. I thought for a moment. Because people used to look at me the same way Aunt Caroline looked at you tonight. Like I didn't belong at the table. He was quiet again. Then he said, almost to himself, but you do belong. So do you, I said quickly. Never forget that, okay? You belong anywhere you walk into. Especially if someone tries to tell you otherwise. He smiled a little, and for the first time all night, I saw the light come back into his eyes. Alyssa came in then, setting down 2 glasses of water and a small dessert tray. Chef Marcus insisted, she said. He said this was his best work tonight. On the plate was a molten chocolate cake, perfectly round, oozing with warmth and covered in gold dust. A single candle burned on top. "What's this?" I asked. Alyssa smiled. "He said to tell you every new start deserves a celebration." For a second, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. "Tell him thank you," I managed. She nodded, glanced toward the door, then leaned closer. "For what it's worth," she whispered, "everyone out there is talking about you. But not in a bad way. Most of them are impressed." I exhaled, a small laugh escaping me. "I'll take that." When she left, Eli leaned forward. "Are we celebrating something?" I blew out the candle and handed him the spoon. "Yeah," I said softly. "We're celebrating not shrinking." He grinned and took the first bite. For a while, everything felt peaceful. The storm outside that room, the whispers, the judgment, didn't matter. It was just me and my boy and the small flame between us. But peace never lasts long in my family. Just as I started to relax, the door opened without knocking. Caroline stood there, her face streaked with mascara, her eyes red. "Anna," she said quietly. "Can we talk?" Eli tensed beside me. I nodded toward him. "Go with Alyssa for a minute, honey. I'll be right here." He hesitated, then slipped out the side door. When it shut, I faced my sister. "You shouldn't be back here," I said. "This is a private room." "I know," she whispered. "But I had to talk to you before Mom leaves." She's furious. I'm not surprised. Caroline rubbed her hands together. "She says you embarrassed the family. That you always have to prove you're better than everyone else." I laughed under my breath. That's rich. She didn't seem to mind embarrassing me in front of a room full of strangers. "You humiliated her," Caroline said, voice trembling. "She says she's not sure she wants you at Thanksgiving." "Good," I said. "I wasn't planning on coming." She blinked. "You don't mean that." "I do. I'm done begging to sit at tables where I'm not wanted." For a second, she looked like the same little girl I used to sneak cookies with after bedtime, scared, uncertain, caught between guilt and pride. "I didn't mean what I said about Eli," she murmured. "It just slipped out." "No," I said quietly. "It came out too easily to be a slip." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "You've always hated that I made it on my own," I said. "Because it meant you couldn't control me anymore." "That's not true," she snapped. "Isn't it?" I asked, standing up. "Every time I tried to build something, you made sure to remind me where I came from. What I didn't have. How I should be grateful for scraps." "You're twisting everything," she said, voice cracking. "No, Caroline. For once, I'm not twisting anything. I'm just seeing it clearly." She looked down, silent. "Tell Mom I said goodbye," I said finally. "And if she wants to talk, she can come find me when she's ready to treat my son with respect." Caroline turned toward the door, then hesitated. "You really don't care if we walk away?" "I do care," I said softly. "But I care about us not being treated like garbage even more." She left without another word. The door clicked shut and the room fell silent again. For a long moment, I just stood there, letting it all sink in, the anger, the exhaustion, the strange relief that came with drawing a line in the sand. Then Eli came back in, holding a small folded napkin. "Alyssa gave me this," he said, handing it to me. Inside, written in looping cursive, were the words, "They're gone. You did the right thing." Eli looked up at me, nervous. "Did they leave?" "Yeah," I said softly. "They left." He nodded. "Good." I smiled faintly. "Yeah, baby. It's good." But deep down, something twisted in my chest, an ache that wasn't victory or peace. Just the quiet grief of realizing that sometimes, standing up for yourself means standing alone. The next morning, the city felt different. The streets were the same, wet from a night of rain, humming with traffic, but I felt like I was walking through a version of my life that had finally stopped pretending. Eli was still asleep when I left the apartment. He'd stayed up late watching cartoons, asking me if Grandma and Aunt Caroline would ever be nice again. I'd told him maybe someday. But deep down, I wasn't sure I cared anymore. I walked to the Meridian house before opening hours. The staff was setting up for brunch, arranging flowers, polishing glasses, adjusting chairs. When they saw me, a few smiled quietly. Word had clearly spread. "Morning, Miss Hart," Marcus called from the kitchen door. "Morning," I said, managing a small smile. "You survived the drama?" He laughed. "Barely. But if it helps, you were the talk of the night. Half the diners applauded after you left." "You're kidding." "I'm not. Someone even tipped Alyssa $100 for standing her ground." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Guess I should start charging for live entertainment." He sobered then, leaning against the doorframe. "You did the right thing, you know. Not just for your kid, for every person who's ever been made to feel small in a place they built themselves." That stopped me cold. "You saw that." "I've worked under enough people to know strength when I see it," he said. "You didn't raise your voice. You didn't humiliate anyone. You just told the truth. And people don't forget that." Something in me softened. "Thanks, Marcus." He smiled. "Anytime, boss." I walked toward the back office then, the one with the framed photos of all 3 restaurants on the wall. There was one empty frame waiting for the next location, still blank, still open. I sat down at my desk and just breathed. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it. But something made me pick up. "Hello, Anna." I froze. My mother's voice. "Hi, Mom." There was a long pause. Then, "I shouldn't have said what I said last night. You said a lot of things." "I know," she said quietly. "Caroline told me everything. About the restaurant. About how hard you worked. I didn't realize." "You didn't ask," I said, echoing my own words from the night before. She sighed. "You're right. I didn't. I was ashamed, I guess. You did everything I said you couldn't, and it made me feel small. So I made you feel smaller." Her voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Years of resentment, of silence, of forced smiles, all of it pressed at the edge of my chest. "You hurt him, Mom," I said quietly. "You made him feel like he didn't belong." "I know," she whispered. "I'll call him. I'll apologize." There was another pause. Then she said something I hadn't heard since I was a kid. "I'm proud of you, Anna." The words landed softly, not dramatic, not loud, but real. And for the first time, they didn't feel like a lie. "Thank you," I said. "Will you come by tomorrow? We'll make breakfast. No fancy tables. Just us." I smiled faintly. "We'll see." After she hung up, I sat there for a long while, staring at the empty frame on the wall. Maybe forgiveness didn't come in grand gestures. Maybe it came in small cracks, the kind that let light back in. A knock sounded on the door. Alyssa peeked in. "Sorry to interrupt, Miss Hart. But there's a woman outside asking about you. Says she's from the Chronicle." "The newspaper?" "Yes. She said she's doing a feature on women entrepreneurs and heard about what happened last night." I blinked. She did. Apparently the story's already trending online. Someone filmed part of the dinner scene. My stomach dropped. "Oh God." "Don't worry," Alyssa said quickly. "They're calling you the woman who owned the room." I laughed in disbelief. "That's ridiculous." "Maybe," she said with a grin, "but it's true." A few hours later, after the interview and the photos and the congratulations, I walked out into the late afternoon sun. The city glowed like it had been polished clean after the rain. Across the street, a young woman stood reading the restaurant's chalkboard menu. She wore a second-hand coat, a backpack slung over her shoulder. Her shoes were worn down. She caught my eye and smiled shyly. "Sorry, I'm just looking. Someday, maybe I'll afford to eat here." Something inside me tightened, the memory of sleeping in my van, of scraping by, of being invisible. "What's your name?" I asked. "Jade," she said. "You hungry, Jade?" Her eyes widened. "A little, yeah." "Come on in," I said. "Lunch is on the house." She hesitated. "Really?" "Really. Everyone deserves a place at the table." The words slipped out before I could stop them. And for once, they didn't taste bitter. They tasted right. As she followed me inside, the doorbell chimed softly above us, the same sound it made every morning, but now it felt different. Like a beginning, not an opening. Eli would wake up soon, and I'd tell him everything about standing up, about forgiveness, about how the tables you build yourself are the ones no one can ever pull out from under you. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a guest in anyone else's story. I was finally at my own table, and I'd saved him a seat.